Have you ever tried interfacing your weighing indicator directly to the IT system via MQTT? If not, this video is for you. My name is Rajveer, founder of Code and Compile, and in this video, we are working with Mettler Toledo IND360 weighing controller. It's compact, it's powerful, it can be easily integrated into your system. And we're going to do something really exciting with that. We are going to connect this to MQTT, which is one of the most popular lightweight protocol for the IoT world. And by the end of the video, you're going to see two fully working integration. One is with the Node-RED, in which I'm going to show you the live weight data coming on the Node-RED dashboard. And another is using Ignition SCADA. And in Ignition SCADA, you can do much more complex things. So if you've seen my last video on IND360, I was talking about how you can read the data via Profinet, via OPC-UA, and API. If you haven't seen that video yet, go back and check that. I highly recommend you to watch that video. So in this video, I'm covering the MQTT integration. So let's get straight into that. So what we're going to see in this video, two use cases. One is, first, we're going to for sure set up the MQTT communication in our IND360. And then we're going to integrate that with Node-RED, which is running on my edge device. It could be running anywhere. So I'm using an edge device, recomputer, which is running my Node-RED, and I'm going to see the live data coming on that, all right? And the second example would be with Ignition SCADA. Ignition SCADA is doing the same thing. You can read the live data. You have some functions for tear, clear, zero, and also happening via MQTT. And the interesting part is Ignition is running on my computer. It's not running on the edge device. So my computer has MQTT broker installed, which is comes along with Ignition. All right, Ignition has several connectors I'm going to show you in the video that you can set up an MQTT broker. You can also set up an MQTT subscriber or publisher to interact with this broker. So in my Node-RED example, I'm using an edge device. In the Ignition example, I'm just using my computer. Or you can use any device which is running Ignition SCADA. So before we continue or configure anything, let me explain simply for those who are new to MQTT, what is an MQTT? Now, MQTT stands for Message Queuing Telemetry Transport. It's a lightweight publish subscribe protocol, which means there are some devices which is going to publish the data to a broker. So if you have a broker in the center, so you can imagine IND360 is publishing the live weight data to the broker, right? Now, broker has all the information. And now you can use several tools, which you can call it as an MQTT client, which will subscribe to this data. And they can also publish the data as well, all right? So broker holds all the data, and then you have several nodes which can subscribe and publish the data. You can imagine something like, when you subscribe to a YouTube channel, right? You subscribe to a specific channel, okay, in the YouTube, and these channels will send you updates into your mailbox, all right? So this specific channel in MQTT world, we call it topics. So we'll learn more about that in detail when we are playing around with MQTT integrations. But this was important for me to explain for those who are not so familiar with MQTT. So just a lightweight communication protocol, which makes things very easy in the IoT world. So let's get straight into that. Let's get started. So the step number one is we have to set up our IND360 weighing indicator with the MQTT communication. So in this case, I'm just going to open my browser. So this is my browser. And that's the IP address, 192.168.0.8. You can see my weighing indicator is up and running. It's also showing some weighing value on that. So I will just log into this controller. And for first time when you're going to enter the IP address, you might have to log in. So just use the default user ID 002, which is in my case. In your case, could be different. But the default ID is 002 without any password. So you get inside this interface. And now you go to the service, in the communication, and here you will see MQTT communication. Now here you can see that it's right now disconnected, and you have several parameters. Now these parameters are for the broker, all right? Because IND360 is not having MQTT broker inside, it's just a client, right? So we need to enter the parameters of the broker. But the question is, where is the broker? We don't have a broker yet. So let's set up a broker. So in this case, I have installed a software application called ShiftTR, and you can find it on the internet. I will put a link in the description. Just download that for your desktop version for testing. And I just turn it on, so it's up and running. So right now, this is my broker. And this circle in the center is kind of like a broker. And this is like it is getting some connection. So I was doing some testing, so you can see a connection is made to this broker. Anyways, we can ignore that. Now to connect to this broker, we need a URL and the port address. Very important. So URL, as you can see that it's localhost. Localhost means it's running on my computer, but the edge device is running, the Metal Toledo is running on a network, right? So now I need to enter, I don't have to enter localhost here. This is a URL. You can see that this is the host. Here I have to put the IP address of my laptop because that's where my broker is running. And for you to test this function, especially when you have IND360, you have to make sure these ports 183, 184 are open. All right. So I can show you some scripts. I have mentioned some scripts where we can find out about this port. So if you open your command prompt and you type, let's say I copy that, netstat space minus ANO space find string 183, and if you press enter, you will see that this port is up and running, right? And if you want to see who's using this port, so here you put the PID. This is the PID. So if I put here 251.384 and I press enter, you can see that you will find information. This port address being used by ShiftGR. So my port 183 is being reserved. In case if this port is used by some other application, this application will ask you to create a new port. All right, we'll do it for you. But you have to make sure you open this port. Now for that, I will give you a command which you can use to open this port. Because in my case, it's already open. I don't have to open it again. So you open your PowerShell and you put this command. I will put this command into the description of the video as well. And here, just change the port number. So this is the new firewall rule for incoming connection, all right? So that the external devices like IND360 can interact with this port. So you have to just mention the port number here, 183, which is in your software. And this will open up the connection. This will allow the connection. So I already have done that. So maybe let's see what it says when I do that again. So it says that access is denied because I believe this port is already being opened, all right? In this case, I don't have to worry about that. Just for you to test that. Now, this is my address. So here, this is my IP address. So how do I know that? For those who are not used to computer, just put ipconfig, press enter, and then you will find your IP address of your computer. I just put this here. Now I have client ID. You can decide whatever you want. Port address is 183. Topic. Now this is very important. This is the topic you need to mention where this IND360 is going to publish the data. Okay, so I put IND360, just like that. Username, password, we don't have. In this specific broker, we don't use username and password. And now supervision, you can either enable it or disable it. So if I enable it, it will tell me if my MQTT connection breaks, so which is very good. So I have this LED here which will start blinking if the connection is not successfully made. For advanced settings, if you want, you can enable that, and then you have some advanced settings for the timeout. I keep it disabled. So once you do that here, you have to make sure you press on set before you click on connect. Okay, click on set, settings are successful, and you can see that now it's blinking because my connection is not made. So this is showing me because of the supervision. I click on connect, and now it's connected. The LED is now green. Now, if I open my software, you can see all the data coming in. So this is my broker, and you can see the data from this broker. You can just ignore this node. So you have your data coming in. You can see that it's IND360. That's the name of my device. It's pushing some data to my broker. What the data is we are having? We are having some alarms, and we are having some measurements here. All right. So in this interface, you cannot read much about the data. You can just see that some of the data is coming. And if I click on, let's say, disconnect, and you can see that the data stops coming. All right. So this is just a visual way to understand where the data is coming from and what kind of topics you have. All right. This was just the basic step to set up MQTT connection with a third-party MQTT broker. Now, we want to do the same with the edge device now. So if you see my presentation here, we are going to do that now with an edge device. So edge device has already Node-RED running inside. You can also have Node-RED into your computer. I prefer to have an edge device for an industrial use case. Now, Node-RED is already running here. I just opened my Node-RED, so I know the IP address by heart. It's 192.168.0.227. All right, that's the IP address, and that's a Node-RED port. Now here, the data is already coming in. I can just subscribe to this data. All right, so to subscribe to this data, I have listed some topics. I will just copy paste the topic. For me, it's much more easy for the video. So I will just take here now MQTT in Node. Now I need to connect to the broker. In this case, I have some broker definitions here. I can add another one. And now because it's also my computer, and I'm connecting from my edge device, so I put my computer IP address, the port address, and there is no security. Click on Add. So that's my broker configuration. Now the topic. The topic which I need to read, if I just put IND360, that's the main topic. If I click on Done, let's see what do we get here. I deploy it, and do we get anything? We don't get anything. Let's see. We have this IND, we have device. So these are the subtopics like device, and then we have scale, and then we have measurement, and then we have alarm. So if you see that, this is the topic where I'm getting some information. So if I copy this one, instead of IND360, I paste it here. So at least I will get my device information in this case. There you go. So your device information is coming, which is the ID number of your device, the type is terminal, serial number, manufacturer, model, and software revision. So that's just talking about my device. Now, if I want to read the alarms, if you see, you can come back here again, and this is the alarm information. Right now, there are no alarms, so I can just go back here again. Maybe I copy it. Alarms, click on Done, debug, and deploy. And now you can see that the alarm is coming. So there's no alarm, so I see an empty array, all right? Now you can read much more information than alarm. Let's see the next one, which is about the scale. So if I copy this one, then I can learn about the scale. You can notice that in the end there is an underscore. Okay, that's the ID of my scale. If I click on deploy, and now it should have some value. All right, but you can also do is that instead of just the scale, you can put measurements. There you can get all the information. For the scale, I think it's just one-time information coming. You can just take the whole measurements. There you go. And now you should have the live data coming in. So let's do it like this. And now you can see that we have two objects. These are coming from this debug 40. All right. So if I just turn it off, and now we can see what is the information inside. We have ID, just the ID of the device. We have a device object, which talks again about the ID, and the type is scale. We have a timestamp. We have the gross weight, net weight, tear value, and the COM code kg. So we have all the information in this topic, in the measurements. All right. And if you want to see live, I can actually turn on my camera. I can also show you my device where you are. So now you should be able to see I have my weighing scale here. I have a device here, and it's showing me a weight value on top of that. So if I put another device on top, the weight will change. And you can see the change here as well in the Node-RED. Now you can see that the change has been updated, 0.560 kilogram. So you can see that the live weighing data is coming directly to the Node-RED via MQTT. Super easy, fraction of minutes, couple of settings, and you have the live data coming in. All right, this was just about subscribing to the data. So I will just put a comment here, and I call it subscribing to MQTT topic. So in this case, what I write here, these strings, these are basically the topic, all right? And now if I want to extract, let's say, the weight value, I can do that super easy. I can take a function node. Let's take one more outside. And if you go down and you can see that, okay, this is my gross weight, I can copy the path. I can just put here message.payload and just type message dot and paste what you just copied. Payload first array dot gross is the gross value we will get here. And I can just rename that to gross weight. Connect that here, and now you can also visualize it over here. Deploy, don't forget to deploy. And now you can see that the gross value is coming, and now if I check the weight away, you can see that the value has been changed. Super easy, right? Similarly, you can also do a net value. So we'll just stop this just to confirm where the net value is coming. You have just this net value. You can just change from gross to net. Click on done. You can also change to net weight, and then you can also have similarly tear. So if I take here and type tear, net tear, copy paste it. Now why I'm taking 3 individual functions, because you can display that visually on the dashboard, which I will show you shortly. So let's deploy that. And now let's see, this is the gross weight, net weight, and tear weight. All right. Now if I tear the scale, which I will do you shortly, using an MQTT, you can see this value will change as well. Okay. So this was about subscribing to the data which is already coming to the broker. Now, next part, what you can do is you can also execute some functions. What functions? Functions could be you can tear the scale, you can zero the scale, and you can clear this tear as well, using MQTT directly from your Node-RED. How to do that? Good question. You can take an inject node, and here first I will put a comment, publishing values. Now, to publish the value, there are some specific way to publish the value. You have a specific format. Okay, so I was playing around with that, and I found out the format by reading the manuals. So the format that you need is, I'll just copy that over here. So for example, I need to tear the scale. Okay, in this case, I take a function. Inside this function, I paste a code. The code says message.payload, which is an object with specific keys and its value. First is the correlation. The correlation means it's the way to find out what you published and what the scale responded. So we can correlate that. What command did you give and what action has been executed, because this correlation will come back as a result, which I will tell you shortly. This is just the timeout value, 42. Response topic is null because we already have a predefined response topic. I will tell you shortly. Command is tear because we want to tear the scale. Content is null. We don't send any content. That's the simple format of the text for tear scale function. So I will put here tear scale. Now the question is, where do you send this information? So you have to send it as MQTT out. All right, take MQTT out, and now you need a topic. So the topic, as per the manual of IND360, is here. I can just copy it. This is your device name, devices, device ID, command, tear, and invoke. This is an invoke function. For that, you select, again, the same broker. That's the broker of my broker which I'm working with. And you send this. Click on done, and then you click on select this together. And now, once the command is executed, I need to get a result for that. Okay, the result is also coming in a different topic. In this case, let's just copy paste this one here. And the topic for result is, actually it's the same string. You can just type IND360 devices, device name, commands, tier. Instead of invoke, you just put result. That's where your result is coming, right? Click on done. And now let's debug that to see if it worked. So let's deploy. And now let's just turn on my camera one more time. So you can see that right now my scale value, or the gross and the net weight, is 0.265. Okay, that's the value right now. And now if I tear the scale, so if I click on this one, hopefully it should work. I have a feedback coming in. You can see that feedback is coming on debug 47. Correlation is the same that I told you I put here, just to relate what I'm getting back. Timestamp, I have a code 200, it worked. In the content, you can see the description, tear completed successfully, which means that you can see on the scale, the value is 0. Now, if I click on the tear weight, I have a value here, 0.265. So the tear function has been executed via MQTT, super easy, just by a couple of topics. All right, now what I have to do is I have to clear this tear. All right, so in this case, I will just copy this whole nodes here. And instead of tear, I put here clear. In the clear, you can just change the correlation. Put clear test1. This will be same. This will be same. Command will be clear. Content is null. Super easy. Okay. But this case, instead of tear invoke, it should go to tear minus clear. That's the topic. Okay. Similarly, change the result. Tear clear. That's it. 2 topics, change it, and now you should be able to clear the value. So right now, We can see that the tear value is this one. If I clear it, now the value becomes 0. And you have a feedback coming as well. Content tear cleared successfully. All right, it's how easy it is. You just need to remember the topics and the format of the message that you need to send to the broker. That's it. That's the same we're going to do in the Ignition SCADA as well. So it's super easy. So now we have tear scale, clear scale. Let's do one more. We can also do 0 the scale. Sometimes you want to 0 the value. Let's rename that to 0. You can change that to 0, just the correlation. Here I will put 0. And again, in the topic, instead of tear clear, I will put 0. 0 invoke and 0 result. That's it. It will 0 the scale if we need to. Now, interesting part is there is another function, preset tear or tear preset, right? We also need to do that. In this case, I will maybe just copy the tear scale and bring it here. Let's rename that to preset tear. Now, the preset tear, what you have to do is you just have to put something extra. So correlation will be preset tear, timeout will be same, command will be, I have to check the command one more time. It's tear minus preset. All right. And the content, now content, what is a tear preset? Basically, if you want to tear the scale with some preset value, let's say 1 kilogram, 2 kilogram, 3 kilogram, you know that preset value by heart, or you know it, that you have to do it. In this case, you can preset that. So the content will not be null. Instead, it will be an object with 2 key values. I have to confirm that one more time. One is the value. So the value, what you're going to send to preset the scale. Let's say I want to put 2 kilograms. So I have to also put it into the string 2.0. And then we need a code, like a unit. Okay, in this case, you could put a unit, and the unit, in this case, in my case, is kilogram. That's it. That's the content of preset tear. Click on done. And now let's see if this works. I deploy it. So right now, if we read the tear weight, it's 0.000. I put here timestamp. And now you can see that it's 0.250. All right, my bad. It's not executed because my topic is not correct. So the topic for preset tear is tear minus preset. You have to make sure you're reading and writing to the correct topic. That's the whole game of MQTT, right? So now let's do one more time. I execute this, and now you can see that tear value is 2 kilograms. Okay. You can also clear this by pressing this button, and now it's clear. Now it's 0 kilogram. So this is how you can easily read the value and write the functions, and you have your scale remotely being configured. And just to make it more interactive, I actually played around with Node-RED, and I made an interactive dashboard, because you can use dashboard nodes in Node-RED and you can show it in the dashboard nodes. So what I do is I will disable this whole function that I created, and I go back to my last example that I was playing around. I enable that, which is actually basically the same. Instead of timestamp, I have some buttons. Instead of output, I have some visual elements. I just have to make sure I correct to the correct MQTT broker. That's it. Let's deploy. And now if I show you the final view, it will be something like this. So now you have your interpolation, you have the weight value, and which I can play around. I can also change the weight value. And you can see it on my screen. Now it's 510. And here I can also set the tear value. This will become here. Now the weight is 0. I can clear the tear value. And if I want to set the tear value here, I can press 2 kilograms, and now you have it here as well. Everything is working, flowing smoothly into your Node-RED dashboard. This was the use case 1, how you can interface your IND360 with Node-RED. This is for Node-RED guys. Now the next example is for people who want some much more integrated, much more visualistic view of your weighing scale. One of the options is Ignition SCADA. I'm going to use the standard version of Ignition SCADA, which is free to use for 2 hours, that you can reset that later on. So let's jump to Ignition SCADA. So to download Ignition, you can go to Inductive Automation website, and there you need to fill up a form, and then you will have a link to download the Ignition. So once you're installing the Ignition, make sure you install the standard version, not the Maker Edition, not the Edge, but the standard version. Install that. And after installation, it will install the gateway. You will come to this localhost colon 8088. All right, this is the port address for Ignition server running into your computer. And once it's up and running, you just have to log in, and you have to log in with the the user ID and the password that you use while installation. Just enter that, you're logged in inside. Now, to use Ignition SCADA, we need another MQTT broker, because we are not going to use this MQTT broker. We're going to install an extra plugin in Ignition so that we have an MQTT broker running inside the Ignition. All right, this will make things much more easy. In this case, what you can do is you can install some extra plugins. I will just open up the link for you. So here you go. This is the website, inductiveautomation.com. Download third-party modules 8.3.4. Now this 8.3.4 is actually the version of Ignition SCADA. So if you can also make sure the version that you install matches with this version. Otherwise, you can change the version from here. Right? I will show you later on where you can see this version once it's already installed. Maybe you can also see it here. I'm not 100% sure where you can see the version. Anyways, here on the top, you can see that Ignition Standard 8.3.4. So this is the version that I have up and running into my laptop. So make sure you check the version and you download two files. MQTT distribution module, I will download that now, and engine module. Now, what are these modules? Now, distributor module is the MQTT broker, all right, that you need to use to send the value. So Scale will send the value to this broker. And then you have MQTT engine module, which is basically the subscriber or the client, which will read the value from this broker. That's how it works together. So we have these two files downloaded. What you have to do now, go back to your Ignition, check the platform, and go to modules. So here I will install these modules. So I have some predefined modules which were installed during the Ignition installation. Click on Install or Upgrade module, choose the file, and choose the file that you use. So I will first install the MQTT engine, which is the broker, which is the client. Accept the certificate, and let's accept the license. It's free to use, so its module is installed. And now we'll install the other one. Choose File, Distributor. This is the MQTT broker. So this has been installed as well. You can see that you have MQTT distributor and engine, but it needs to be active. For that, we need to restart the gateway. So you can see that there is a button here. I need to restart the gateway. Click on this button and click on Restart Gateway. So once it restarts, it will initialize these two modules that we just installed. All right, so we just wait a couple of seconds and it should be then up and running. All right, seems like it is restarted now. Now, if you see that I have a login button, I have to log in again. Click on that, and I will just log in with my username and password. Just code and compile to verify my identity. Let's continue. All right, so now I'm logged in. If I go to, again, modules, I should see that this is distributor is active and engine is active. So these status are important. Make sure you don't have any fault or error there. Now, once this is active, you can go to connection, and then you will see MQTT distributor. That's the broker. Let's work on that first. Click on the settings, and it's by default enabled. So my broker is up and running. It has a port 183. Now it took my port address on my computer, and the rest I don't have to do anything. Let's see what we have in advanced settings. If you want, you can also allow anonymous connections. In this case, you don't have to have a user authentication. I will keep it false. So broker is up and running. In this case, I just go to user now, and I have several users already created. I think it just took it from my log. So you can create the user. So let's just create one more time. I will just delete the users. And we just create new users here. The users are required from MQTT client to connect securely. So I click on add a user. I will create Node-RED and also Node-RED. So Node-RED is username and password is the same. And now I will create another user. So let's go to user and create another user. This time I'll call it Ignition. Ignition. So we have two users. One is Node-RED and one is Ignition. All right. Now what we have to do is our broker is already configured. Now we go to the subscriber or the client, which is going to talk to the broker, which is MQTT engine. This is already enabled, and these are by default checked. It's okay, totally fine. And we just go to the server. So now we have to connect to this Ignition distributor. So I already have this connection. Like I told you, took it from my old logs. I will just delete that. And I create a new connection, all right? So you can see that I have by default, you might also see Chariot SCADA is running. So in this case, you can just go to the edit and disable that, and you create a new connection. So I click on Add Server. I give it a name, let's say Ignition Distributor. Now the URL, you can see that the URL should be in the format TCP. So I copy that here. And now comes the IP address. Now you can take, in this case, localhost, because this is already running into my computer. And then you can just put the port address 1883. Okay, this is the IP address of my server. This IP, the port address, we already set up in the distributor. Server set, I keep it default. Username, now I have to enter my username, Ignition, and password also Ignition. Confirm the password, Ignition as well. And that's it. You can create the server. So my server has been created. Now we have to see the status. Now it is connected. Everything is working fine. So right now, my Ignition client, MQTT client, is able to speak to Ignition MQTT broker. It's just between the Ignition, nothing with the IND360, right? So now our broker is up and running. One more thing we have to check. We have to check the namespace. So before coming to IND360, why namespace is important? So in namespace, you will see that we have by default Alexis and Sparkplug. Sparkplug B and Alexis are basically the standards to define how your MQTT data should be formatted when it is going to the broker, right? In our case, we don't have these formats. IND360 is also not following this format. So to read the information which IND360 is sending to the broker, I have to create a custom name server. Here you can see that I already have one, but I can just create it one more time. You can create a custom namespace. You can put a namespace, anything that you like. I just put Ignition, default, something like that. MQTT topic, now I will put here hash because I want to read all the topics that are coming in. Root folder, you can just define the name of the folder. I can just put IND360_folder, it's like I was using it before. And the tag name, you don't need to add anything. And then you have to make sure you check treat payload as JSON, because the payload could be coming in string. So it will automatically parse that to a JSON object. So I will make sure this is ticked. Let me see the advanced settings. In the advanced settings, because we are going to write the values as well to the tags, make sure this is also checked, because we want to write the value back to the topics. That's it. All you have to do like this, create namespace. Oh, something is missing. Okay, let's next. Name says server set. We can choose the default set. We don't have to create a new one. That's it. Click on next and click on done. So your namespace has been defined. Now, once these two things happens, next is we have to configure our IND360 to send a value to this broker. So now in this case, I go back to IND360 and you can see that I have some connection error because my shift-tr broker is not connected anymore. So here I have to make sure I have again the IP address of my computer because Ignition is running into my computer. The port address is correct. Topic name is correct. Now the username and password. So username, I think I should create another one. So here you can go to users, add a user. Let's put IND360 here. Password IND360 as well. IND360. So user has been created. We go back to here and just type your username IND360 and the password IND360. Let's see if we can connect. Click on connect. We have some error because I didn't click on set. That's my problem. I forgot to click on set first. So this is, first let's set that. Now this is set. Click on connect. Now we are connected. Now the broker is running into my Ignition and IND is sending the value already there. How to verify that? In this case, you can go to Home and then you have to download the designer. So you can click on the download the designer for the Windows or for Mac or for Linux. I have already downloaded that. Once you downloaded that, just open up the designer launcher. So it will install it and then you will see this window. Now you have two servers running here, localhost 8088, which is unsecure, 8089, this is more secure, I believe. If I'm wrong, excuse me for that. So just open this server in this case, localhost 8088, and then it will ask you to log in one more time. and then you have a designer. Designer is where you design your SCADA screen. And there I'm going to show you how you can read these values, all right? So let's just wait for this designer to start. Okay, designer is running. I can enter my ID and password. This is the same ID and password which you used while installing Ignition into your computer. So let's see if this works. All right, I'm inside. Let's create a new project. IND360 tutorial. So it will initialize some default UI interfaces for me. And there I can show you where you can read the values, which I believe is already coming to my MQTT broker. Okay, so this is your SCADA screen, how it looks. And on the left side, you will see tag browsers. In this case, make sure you click on MQTT engine. And now you will see that my folder is there, IND360, which I created in the MQTT engine. And if you open that, you have some values, IND360, and you have a device, and then you have device name, and then you have a scale, and then this is the underscore. And then you will see measurements. This is the first object, like in Node-RED. We open that, and now you can see all the values. You have a gross value, you have a net value, you have a tear value. Okay, so this is everything is coming here directly. So it automatically created tags for you. So if you want to use it, let's open a main window. Let's call it IND360. Main window, create that. This is my window. I'm just showing you a very easy way. We have a gross weight, just drag and drop here, display label. And that's your value coming in, right? Super easy. Similarly, you can click on net one and drag and drop here, display, then you have a net weight. And then you have a tear value as well. This is coming also via MQTT. So IND360 is sending it to MQTT distributor, and MQTT engine is reading from the distributor, and then you can visualize it here, all right? And then you can also go to the properties, and for example, you can configure how the text should look like, if you want to enable it, if you want to disable it, how you want to align it, you can make it bold, all the visual things, you can do that for this label. If you want to show it much more like visually good, you can just drag and drop LED display, and then just drag this gross weight here. And wait a second, you can open this gross weight and check the value, then bring it here. And now you can see that it's 0.47 coming from here. And you can also go to the properties and then put maybe a unit if you like, and then you have this value, 0.47 kilogram. Okay, so this is a visual way to represent your information. So we just keep it simple. I keep it as it is. So if I want to put a text here, I can also go and take a label. And inside the label, I can go to the properties, call it tear, and copy that, paste. I can call it net, and this one is gross. So you have three labels. So if I see my 0.457, it was the net, and minus 1.5 is sorry, this is the net, and this is the gross, and this is the tear value. So you have this information coming. If you want, you can also align that. It's just all cosmetics, right? And now, interesting part is how we can execute the function in Ignition. Also very interesting part, you can click a button here, and let's call this button, I'll go to properties again, and I call this button tear, all right? I have to execute a tear function on that. Now, if you notice here in MQTT engine, you have measurements. Let me see if we can already see it here. Measurements, and now we don't see it here. All right, because we did not invoke a function, we don't see the structure of that function here, all right? So what I do is I take this tear button, I go to the scripting, and I go to the script editor. This is my Python script editor inside my Ignition. I can enter a piece of code here, which is going to publish. Now, if you remember my tear function from my Node-RED, I was having correlation, TTL, response topic, command, and content. I'm going to do the same in my Ignition, but in a bit different way. So I'll just open my Ignition component. I'm just going to copy the code that I was playing around before instead of typing, and it will be too long otherwise. I copy this code here, and I paste it here. So this code says you import JSON because we're going to use some JSON function. My payload is quite similar to what you saw before, but I dump it first. So I dump means I convert this JSON into a string, right? You can see that correlation is the same: ignition tear, TTL42, response topic, command tear, content none. And now, because this MQTT engine and MQTT distributor is from Cirrus Link, so we're going to use some specific syntax: system.cirruslink.engine.publish. We're going to publish this value because it's published, right? First, you put the name of your MQTT broker, which I told you it's Ignition Distributor, and then the topic. And this is similar to what we used here. This is the invoke. It's the same topic, right? And then you have to use payload.encode because in Ignition, we have to send the value. This is the structure how this broker and the client is working in the array of byte. So your string is split into array of bytes. That's why I use payload.encode. One is the quality of service, which is 1, and this if I want to retain this information, which I make it false. So this is the code that I use. If you want this code, you can find it in my Wikipedia to publish the data. I click on apply, click on OK, and let's see if that works. So I click on play here, and now if I click on tear, oh, this is already tear value. Okay, let's clear that first. So I can also just go here, home button, and clear the tear. Now the tear is cleared, and now if I click on tear, now you can see that the value has been tear. This is working. That's how you publish information using Ignition. So similarly, you can also use the clear button, and you can use the 0 button. You just change the code. And I don't want to do that everything here, but I will show you the final output. But if you want to have the code of all these buttons, you can go to my Wikipedia where I mention all this code and all the steps of execution. All right. And one more thing, which is very important, now that I executed the tear, you will see on the left side, you have this command. In the command, you can see that we have a tear, and we have an invoke and result. Now the result is coming because we executed the tear. The result was code 200, and if you see the description of that, you can see that tear completed successfully. If you want, you can also just bring it here and display it as a label. This is kind of like a feedback that you can get once you execute a function, So I will not go deep into how this Ignition designer works, but I will show you the final output, which I played around and I created to show you the possibility of using Ignition SCADA. So let's just save that, and I open up a different project. This is IND360. Let's open that. And there you go. That's my window. Now if I go to hit play, you can see that all the information is here. Let's turn on my camera. There you go. Now we have some weight, which is the tear value 0.47. I can clear this tear. And by clearing this tear, you can see that I have a feedback. Tear cleared successfully. Very nice with a timestamp and with a command. Now if I want to change the weight, I can change the weight. So you can see that the value is real time, now 0.2. And if I want to preset that tear, I will enter the value here, 1 kilogram, press on preset tear. Now the tear value is 1 kilogram. Net value is minus 0.83 for sure. And I can also clear the tear. And there you can see that the value is stable. So if I keep on pressing, and because the weight is not changing, it will not be as stable. Once the weight stabilizes, it will tell you the weight has been stabilized. This is another nice function for a user to know that weight is stable. And these are the 3 buttons. I can tear this, I can clear this, and I can zero it as well. And this table which you see here is basically coming from a database. So basically, I am sending the information to my database, which is inside the Ignition, is the sample database, and then I'm reading the information from the database. So I'm doing some kind of scripting here. You can see that I have some gateway events. I have a tag change. Tag change means if I'm doing the clear operation, there's a timestamp in that which changes. With that change in this timestamp, I can execute some functions and I store that into my database. All right, as you can see, that is an insert query. So with the preset here as well, I execute the function to store the information, which is coming as a feedback from my MQTT broker, the result feedback, right? That's all the information is being stored. Like I said, if you need the copy of this code, you can more than welcome to use it, but make sure it aligns to your project, and you can also change that based on what you want to do. That's it. That's my Ignition dashboard, and you've seen my Node-RED dashboard. That's how you can use these two software platforms to read the data, write the data via MQTT to IND360. All right. So that is a wrap-up of IND360 MQTT integration. We went from 0 to the fully working industrial dashboard. Let me just change this one now. With lightweight data and remote commands and commands like clear, clear, 0. Also getting the feedback and showing the feedback looping onto your screen, which is like a completely industrial setup. So if you want to learn more about that, how I did it, you can check out my Wikipedia, where I've listed all the topics, the steps of integration with all the code, background code as well. And if you need more information, feel free to write a comment on this video. I'll be happy to answer you that. If you find this video useful, please subscribe, please share, click on the bell icon for the more new videos on IND families or other topics which I'm doing every month and now. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.